どうぞ。
For this House to order, the motion for this round is this House believes that labor unions should have their power suspended during times of economic crisis. I call upon the Prime Minister to speak within 7 minutes. Here.
So in times of economic recession, when companies are endangered, we think that it's a trade-off between people's right to labor and companies' right to pursue benefit. And we tell you, Mr. Speaker, that our stance is that companies' rights are something more important than some people's labor's right. Because we need companies to sustain our economy and first of all develop the country in the first place. We think that the existence and sustaining of company is what we have to care. We think that labor unions are in that case an obstacle and rather destructive against the company's sustainability in recession. That's why we suspend it. So our case is simple. One, we think that recession is something that the government determines by objective criteria like GDP growth or like government estimation. We tell you in this condition, labor unions' rights to privileges are suspended. We mean privilege by like right to negotiation, right to organize strikes, or right to simply gather and make those meetings to do certain things. These things are not allowed to be done. And we are not talking about labor laws. We think that's the minimum wages or those kind of things that are determined by the government is something that we do not care about this debate. But we only talk about labor unions doing certain things within the company and affecting companies in bad ways. And I'm going to talk about two things: why companies' right overrides workers' right uniquely in recession, and secondly, how this proposal uniquely saves company and why we think that's very important. So first, we think that companies' existence is the basis of workers' right. What do I mean by this? We think that workers are only workers because they're hired by companies. We think that the existence of companies and they're hiring workers is the basis of having like workers' right and getting salary and making a living in the first place. And we tell you that companies and thus the companies sustaining the fundamental basis of workers being there. And so we tell you that when companies are endangered and their benefit is somewhat a trade-off with the workers like wages and workers being fired, the few amount of workers being fired is less important than company bankrupting and all workers being fired in the first place. And secondly, we tell you that the quantitative more importance in the company's existence. What do I mean by this? I mean by the ability to sell products and regain trust and boost investment by the existence of a company is something really important for the recession to get out of the recession in the first place. Once again, that's only assured when the company exists there. We tell you that on that qualitative point, we think that workers' right, that they are going to be harmed is somewhat less important than the company's recovery and country's recovery in the first place. Moreover, we tell you that the reason why a country went into recession is that companies lost trust. That's why there's not investment or banks not giving out money or so forth. We tell you the only way to recover that trust is for companies to meet ends and get more benefit and will make ends meet and show to the society that the company is doing good. In order to do so, the company really has to maximize the benefit that it can to make itself as a company look good, to gain trust again, and to get out of recession as a whole, collectively as a company existing in the society. No, thank you. So on that point, we tell you that in order to gain trust, we need to maximize benefit. We think that the workers' right, because it's something against assuring that benefit of companies, we think in order to get out of recession and to protect more workers' rights, we say that companies' rights must be prioritized. Yes.
in the first place, labor unions now reflect the collective voice of the entire workers in the first place. Why can't you regard the will of labor union in the status quo as a few workers' will?
Because it's so collective, it suspends workers' right to fire one worker. It does not allow the company to fire any worker. It does not allow the company to cut salaries collectively of these workers. And if the company does so, it does things like a strike that kills companies' benefit business and also the company's trust, which entirely makes them more likely to be bankrupt and not even regain its trust at all. So, to the second, we tell you that in the status quo, companies are really likely to bankrupt compared to whereas labor unions do not exist. I mean by the fact that labor unions have strong rights, like their right to refuse salary cuts or right to refuse workers from being fired. So what they do, negotiate with the company for companies doing so, and if the company forces to do these kind of things, they go on strike. That's what we see. That's what we somewhat saw in the Thatcher's government with in the United States with some companies. And what this strike does is one, it simply suspends the company's benefit. When the company is struggling to get benefited, first of all, we think the suspension of benefit is something that is decisive to the existence of company. Secondly, we tell you because the company's business was suspended, it loses the trust of the company. Contractors are likely to go to other companies, and this company is not likely to stand up again because it loses contractors and also lost its trust like investors or so forth. No, thank you. So we think that what the labor union is doing when the company is struggling to get benefit is suspending companies' power to recover itself, and not rather also killing it by losing its trust and stopping its business. On this point, we tell you. It tells you that its companies are more likely to be bankrupt. So we tell you that more workers are likely to be lost because I've already told you how companies gone means that all workers being gone compared to just a few amount of workers being fired. We also tell you that the country is unlikely to develop. What do I mean by that? I mean by the fact that the country loses a unique method to develop in the first place, because you need a company there that simply move the economy in the first place. You need a company there to make an industry in the first place. Companies gone means that the country loses that industry, and especially when the company is huge, like General Motors or some other huge companies, America lost its unique method of pushing its industry as a car industry. We think on that point because it's hard for a company to develop that kind of huge scale. We think that keeping companies alive is something more really important for the country to do in the first place. We think that labor union kills companies. We think that's really against the development and that the development on country, and that's why you propose.
I thank the previous speaker for his speech. I call upon the next speaker to speak within 7 minutes. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that this debate is not about a trade debate. We believe that the protection of the rights of the employees and also the protection of the financial situation of the companies can be both adoption. We believe the labor union is capable to protect the financial situation. We believe that the labor union is necessary to protect the rights of employees. And we believe that protection of the rights of employees should exist in every time and every station. And that's why we are very proud to oppose. Three things from the opening government. The first is how the labor union can work in times of economic crisis. And secondly, why the workers will be treated unequally in economic crisis, in times of economic crisis. And thirdly, why the workers have also right to decide about the company. but before the several rebuttals. They pointed out about the trust. The company will lose trust if they go bankrupt and so on. But we believe that the financial situation of the maximization of the benefit is not the only things that they can gain better trust. We believe that the protection of the rights and protection of the safety of workers is also one of the key things to keep the trust, ladies and gentlemen. And if the companies exploit the workers, and if the companies use the workers in very unfair ways and unfair times, in free times, in free ways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, we believe that they will also lose the trust. Therefore, we believe that keeping the labor union can also benefit to keep the trust in society. No, thank you. The secondly, they pointed out that the company may go bankrupt if the labor union seeks more higher demand, higher wage, and so on. But and higher protection of the workers and so on. But we believe that the labor union will also care about the financial situation of the company. Why is that? Because if the company goes bankrupt, all the workers in that company will lose the job. Therefore, the labor union is capable to think about the sustaining of the company to protect the majority workers, ladies and gentlemen. In that case, they are capable to protect the company from going bankrupt. No, thank you. I will explain in my point in more detail. Then let's move on to my point. The first point: how the labor union can work in times of economic crisis. Now, we believe that the labor union is not the existence that always seeks the higher wages, always seeks the higher protection of the rights of the employees. We believe that the labor unions also compromises to the companies and make compromises compromise with the companies in every time. Now, we believe that by the great healthy discussion with the companies and labor union, they know and they compromise in the fair ways with the company that is capable for the companies to pay for, ladies and gentlemen. What can happen? And no, thank you. And we believe the companies also have to hear about the labor union. Why is that? Two reasons. Firstly, because the labor union have a weapon to strike against the companies. We believe the companies have to hear about the labor union. And secondly, because they have a great social influence, because the many people participate, we believe that the companies have to hear about it. And if the companies ignore it, then they will lose the trust in the society. And therefore the companies have to hear. In that case, why the labor union is very good to make a compromisation. We believe that firstly, we believe that as the labor union represents the collective opinion in the company and of the laborers, we believe that it can protect the majority and more of labor in the company. And secondly, they also have a responsibility to care about the company's financial crisis, to keep the jobs of the majority people. And the companies, we believe that they will not demand higher wages that is unable for companies to pay for. And also the labor union it can afford to accept some firemen and some dismissal of the employees. And in the case of the job economic crisis, a bankrupt or GM economic crisis, in the Lehman shock, the labor union has accepted some firemen to sustain the company's benefit, to keep for the future, to keep the company for the future, to protect the majority rights of the majority people. Okay, closing.
Okay, I appreciate your theoretical analysis in debate utopia, but in the actual debate context, such as United Kingdom in the later 19th century, how would you say the fact that it has drastically decreased liquidity in the labor market by excessive power by labor union?
The way it is the absolute power of the labor union. In the 21st century, as the very complicated economy, we believe the labor union has also an ability to care about economic crisis. But when the in the 17th century, where the labor union is excessively exploited, labor union have to take an extreme action to make right. But we believe that now they're capable to make the peaceful. No, thank you. Have a peaceful movement to gain the power, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. The second point, why the labor workers will be in the weakest position in the society if we take this motion. They pointed out that the wage will be protected by the government, minimum wage will be protected by the government, so it is not a problem. But no, thank you. But what the labor union also does is that the protection of the safety and the protection from the poverty and from the jobless, ladies and gentlemen. And we believe that the companies and employers are likely to prioritize their benefit and in order to sustain, in order to keep the benefit. And the first thing they will want to cut is the benefit of employees because they are not related to them. No, thank you. Therefore, what companies and employers do is firstly to cut the welfare on the jobless and protection from the danger and so on, ladies and gentlemen. If they are not protected by the government, the workers have no voice to say and to secure for the companies. Why is that? Because the workers are very in a weak position. Because if they cannot unite, they are likely to be exploited and their voices are likely to be ignored. And thirdly, briefly, why the workers have also right to decide about the company. The first point, we believe that each individual have a right to decide about lifestyle, and we believe that the company is also highly related to the lifestyle of them. Therefore, we believe that they have a right to say. And secondly, workers are also contribute to the company's benefit and country's property, ladies and gentlemen. Therefore, they have ability and they have right to say about it, to decide about own selves. And thirdly, because the company also exists in society and have a compliance to citizens, we believe that they should not be decided. The decision about the property should not be decided by the particular people and executives. And that's why we are very proud to propose.
I thank the speaker for his speech. I call upon the next speaker to speak within 7 minutes. Here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This debate is about trade-off. Because we cannot prioritize both things in the first place. In terms point, we can see the clear inconsistency coming from the opposition side. On the other hand, they say the labor union is actor to protect labor's right in the first place. But also they say the labor union has contributed to the development of the company in the first place. In this situation, if the compromisation happens, they have to prove when compromisation happened, how compromisation happened. No explanation coming from the opening opposition. Rather, the opposition side says that if the compromisation, always compromisation happen, how to protect the labor's right in the first place. In terms of this point, these kinds of characteristics never ever stand at the same time. That's why we have to. This debate is about trade. We have to prioritize this kind of company in the first place. So two things in my speech. Firstly, I want to explain about why the compromisation itself is quite harmful towards this kind of the company itself. Secondly, I want to compare the company rights and labor rights. I want to explain one by one. But several response towards opening opposition. In the first place, the opening opposition says that as a trust is also related with the relations to relate with trust is also related with the benefit of the company. That's why the company has to take care of these kinds of has an incentive to take care of this kind of labor and so on. But it is completely not true. Why is that so? In order to escape from these kinds of economic crisis, the company has to gain the benefit in the first place. Why is that so? In order to escape this situation, investment is the fundamental necessary because under the economic crisis, the lack of money is quite the problematic. So that's why we have to get interested of the investor itself. So that's why the achievement quite the necessary. If the achievement is quite bad, the no investor has an incentive to invest this company itself. So that's why in order to get benefit, in order to escape from this kind of economic crisis, the investor's interest is a fundamental necessary. In terms of point, we have to improve this achievement of the company. So that's why the trust is important, but rather this kind of the achievement is more important. So that's why we have to change this kind of situation in the first place. So secondly, the opening opposition says that the compromisation is necessary. The representative of the labor is necessary. But this point is quite harmful. So in the first place, rather as I explained that, in my introduction, that they never explain how compromisation happens, when compromisation happens. This is the burden of to the operation side, but no explanation from operating side. So other engagements are included into my point. So firstly, I want to explain about why the compromisation itself is quite harmful towards this kind of company itself. So what is the economic crisis? In this situation, we need speed. We need a quick decision in the first place, because under the economic crisis, as soon as possible, we have to reduce this kind of debt. We have to reduce this kind of loan in the first place. Because if you cannot cannot give the loan towards people, you have to lose, the companies are lost the trust, and this kind of company have to go to the bankrupt. So that's as soon as possible, this kind of company have to give the loan to the others, to the bank, and so on. So that's why the quick decision is fundamentally necessary in the first place. But the opening of opportunity side continuous compromisation is necessary. But you have to recognize in this situation, the labor union is a collective, the actor, the labor in the first place. So that's why in Taiwanese point, we need the time in the first place. The labor union have to gather all the idea of the labor union and have to negotiate with the executive, the company in the first place. We need this kind of time itself. It's fundamentally harmful toward this kind of thing. Good example is here, the UK and France, the subway as a strike. This in every time this kind of strike is a quite long time, because within the labor union the conflict happens. This is a unique point, because within the labor union, there's the spectrum in the first place. Some person is a radical, some person is a moderate. We have to compromise. Some person needs we have to battle with the company. In this situation, within the labor union, this kind of discussion happens. So that's why the time is quite necessary. So rather, if the labor union can decide one's opinion, also discuss with the company itself. So that's why this kind of subway case, this kind of long time the strikes happen. It's quite harmful towards the company's benefit, and because uniquely under the economic crisis, we need this kind of quick decision in the first place. That's why we have to trust this kind of company itself, because the company all prioritize these kinds of the community. Companies prioritize other communities, companies prioritize the company itself. So that's why in order to protect this kind of community, as a community, we have to protect this kind of the company itself. Yes.
If your characterization of the corporation is absolutely the case, why don't you abolish labor union?
Yeah.
In all contexts?
In the first place, I continuously told you, if we consider this kind of labor unions are necessary to listen to what the labor they want to do. But under this kind of economic crisis, this is a complete obstacle to this kind of. We are talking about the trade-off. So that's why in this situation we have to prioritize this kind of company right itself. So that's why the moving on second point. I want to compare the company's rights, the labor's right. So operation says that the labor unions prioritize themselves. For example, the pension, for example, insurance, and so on. The labor's first priority is themselves in the first place. So, but on the other hand, company's first priority is the company in the first place. Well, in Taiwanese point, so we have to compare the both sides. So if the company is bankrupt, in Taiwanese point, the labor is kindly irrational in the first place, because under the repression, if they lost a job, it's difficult to get a new job. So that's why this kind of the labor has an incentive to stick to this company. So that's why in this situation we can see the clear irrationality. If every labor has this kind of thing, it's quite harmful towards the company itself. So if this kind of company is bankrupt of these kinds of labor, then we cannot sustain this kind of thing. So in order to survive, we have to prioritize the company itself. After the economic crisis, we are happy to listen to what the labor want to do with this kind of thing, because we have the capacity to do so. But in this particular context, the company cannot do that in the past. If they prioritize the labor, they have to go to the bankruptcy. If after the bankruptcy, it's irreversible, no one will regain this kind of the company itself. So that's why this harm is quite harmful, because the labor also have no way to get these kinds of. No labor can have no way to get the benefit from the company, and so on. Even the negotiation don't happen. We have the already labor law, the minimum wage, the standard already exists. The excessive abuse never ever happen. So that's why even under our partner, we also protect this kind of labor right. So that's comparatively speaking, we are in this situation we have to prioritize the company. Thank you.
I thank the previous speaker for his speech. I call upon the next speaker to speak within 7 minutes. Sit here.
これを話す。もうそれも変更したらそれで。でも外されてるけど、アサンプションになってるから。
Okay, so what happens in their model is that there will be hugely imbalanced negotiation to happen between the two actors in this situation. The excessive burden will be imposed on the individuals, especially those weak and vulnerable workers who are working under those like high-class employers. And on the other hand, the corporation leaders will benefit by this unnecessary. We think that working under someone is a contract, and there should be a fair negotiation. And with this principle, in order to protect this, we need labor union to have a more fair negotiation. And that was the clear analysis coming from LO, no engagement from the Deputy Prime Minister. So what I'm going to do is firstly debut the previous speaker. Okay. So what we heard from the Deputy Prime Minister is like the thing that like the labor union is obstacle for a company, and like, it takes quite a lot of time for a company to like restore benefit. Time is very important thing, and like therefore like labor union have to be abolished. We say that actually time is sometimes not really important, especially in this particular case. Why? Because we see a clear incentive for banks to dismiss this short-term loss of those companies, because the banks and those economic specialists know that the economy is about has sometimes a good time and sometimes bad time. They know that in the near future, because all the society as a whole is reducing this unnecessary cost in this economic recession times, in the near future those losses will be those unnecessary things will disappear. Therefore, they know that economy will expand in the near future. They know therefore the banks has a clear incentive to invest in those companies that is suffering in the status quo, because they know the nature of those economy. So that therefore we say that just by having this ability to fire those employees does not mean that these companies will fail instantly. So their logic is just wrong in that meaning, and therefore their analysis of time is just wrong. And then I'm going to examine what we heard from Prime Minister. Prime Minister told us two logics why those labor unions are harming the productivity of those companies. Well, firstly, we say that firing, inability to fire workers is not a problem, as I've told you. Second, they say strike is very damaging for a company's interest, therefore it's extremely bad. We say that strike only happens in extreme cases, and moreover, strike happens it does not happen in the long term that damages the company. The pure incentive of those strike is to reflect the workers' interest, and it's never ever the interest of the workers to collapse those companies. Its only interest is to make those employers hear those voices. So often really happens is employers and the labor unions try to not make those strike from happening as much as possible, and when they find that the labor standards is so bad to the extent they have to do it, they're going to do it, but they're going to stop it as soon as possible. So we see this mechanism going to happen. We say that this is not going to destroy the company itself. So before that, closing.
Okay, if your logic is so true, why did General Motors conduct strikes over and over and made a huge step which had to lead to bailout by United States of America?
Well, okay. Factually speaking, like that didn't like destroy General. That's not the reason why General Motors have failed. Like what happened in reality is like the part of the labor unions has stopped doing strike, and therefore like those people who stay there like sustain the factory to run, and we see this mechanism happening. But at the same time, the companies had incentive to hear workers' voice, and this balance out happened. So what I'm going to tell you from the deputy leader position is principally we're going to tell you why this situation that we're going to achieve is necessary. The principle one is like we say that this the contract between the employers and employee should be fair because like and we say that the fair contract means that each individuals have a say or have a chance to say and have a chance to reflect their voice when they have a negotiation. We say that this is extremely important because when there's no like consensus, when one part of the negotiation is forced to agree on that choice, it is a legitimate choice. And what we see this happening in their model in two reasons. Firstly, we say that individuals in the particular in this condition of economic recession, we see these individuals having no legitimate choice but to like stay in those companies as the Deputy Prime Minister have consented. What happens is that like, they have to stay there, and therefore like they have to agree upon unfair unfair proposals but given by those companies. Therefore, they have to give up is those pays. What they have to give up is like those excessive works that the company is going to force them to do so. We say that these are nothing that they wanted to consent, but because in this particular case they have no choice but to consent on that issues, it is extremely bad. And but their hesitation is never to be heard by the company because it is nothing that it never damages company when they dismiss the voice of those individuals. Secondly, we say that when the individuals are split apart and the labor unions are not there, it is very much difficult for the individual labor workers to reflect their voice in the society level because the labor unions because when each individual complain about issues and when each individual fired, the reality is not all employees are fired, right? And those people have no direct relationship with those people, so like therefore no huge societal movement that happens. But like when the labor union is there, like those like people who are fired, this problem is also a concern for the majority of employees. Therefore, the movement can happen, and therefore this deflection of voices can happen. We want to have a fair negotiation as much as possible. So lastly, I'm going to tell you why, like in the looking at why actually their policy is going to damage the economy. So like economy is about protecting most vulnerable. Economy is most efficient when every individual is working. It's worse when some individual have no job and have nothing to do. What happens is the most vulnerable people, like the factory workers, are kicked out from the company, and those people have no job, and therefore they're nothing beneficial for the economy. What we have in our model is company will compromise and have the shared work between those factory workers. Therefore, that each individual factory workers have job and sustain minimum standard of good lives. We say that is more beneficial because those people are certainly going to contribute to the economy. We say that model is more better for the workers and for the economy. For those reasons, probably opposed.
I thank the previous speaker for his speech. I call upon the next speaker to start the closing half of the debate within 7 minutes. Yeah, here.
When General Motors has excessively striked during times of economic recession, it has led to a situation where General Motors were close to the bankrupt, where the United States of America had to give an official bailout by the state. When Japan Airlines labor union has conducted its own selfish benefit and advocated for zero benefit, it has led to a situation where Japan's airlines situation was devastatingly damaging. We say, especially in the context of economic recession and economic crisis, there's a likelihood that these labor unions are likely to be myopic and have excessive prioritization of their livelihood. That's why it's much more better to give it up to the hands of board of executives who's able to make long-term calculation and accountable to all workers in general, and that's precisely the extension we're going to bring you from closing government. closing comment today. So there are two extensions I'd like to bring you on the floor. First, I'm going to give you a comparative specific analysis between labor union and board of executive. Why do you have to prioritize board of executive decisions over labor union? And its opening half debate about workers and corporation. Second, I'm going to explain specific mechanisms, how we leave it up to board of executives or the corporation, how we're quickly able to get out of recession, and how that's beneficial in the long run. But before that, let's briefly kick out opening opposition. What we heard from opening opposition was like this. Well, workers in weight position. We agree workers in weight position. This debate is about which side is actually able to boost the economy at the end of the day to protect more workers at the end of the day, right? Because if you take it all, if you keep the status quo of having lots of excessive demands by labor unions, it's going to stagnate the economy by decreasing liquidity of these corporations to be able to do what they want to do. This means it's going to have more unemployment in the future. If whole economy is devastating, who's not capable to hire people, then more unemployment is going to happen in their policy. So if they really oppose unemployment, you have to be siding with us, because our policy is much better if you're able to empower corporation at the end of the day. That's why we asking a point of information to leader opposition. We point to example United Kingdom. After later 20th century, in the later 20th century, where United Kingdom's policy has actively given less power to labor union, it has led the situation to get out of the economic recession. We said similar things likely happen. Our policy is an extension. The second thing we heard, labor unions' rights, is very important. Firstly, the problem is they couldn't explain why it actually extends for every single time, even in times of economic recession. That was a failure from opening opposition. But secondly, we're not compromising every form of labor union's rights, because we still allow rights such as labor laws to not be fired randomly. Of course, if they're conduct like slavery or excessive working hours, there's still corporate laws, there's civil lawsuits they can do. So obviously there are avenues to protect these individuals to a certain extent. Three, in terms of time, we're only limiting times of economic recession. So we're not randomly taking away rights in every single case after they get out of the economic recession. So basically, their right is compromisation. We agree they were compromising rights, but a temporary and small portion of their rights anyway. The final thing we heard was there's excessive abuses by CEOs, which was contradictory with their characterization, because they said by their own logic that corporations like to care about their workers by the trust. So according to your logic, then corporations are able to have trust. That's why they don't have an incentive to excessively damage these workers or conduct slavery or torture or whatever they really want to talk about. So basically, their case fundamentally false. My extension. Firstly, I'll give a comparative specific comparison between labor union and board of executive. Two levels analysis here. Firstly, in terms of accountability, and secondly, in terms of information. Firstly, in terms of accountability, we say that workers in the specific context is likely to lose accountability because they are likely to be myopic and have excessive prioritization of their own livelihood. Because especially in context of economic recession, they can imagine that their lives will be threatened directly. When they're cut off by the state, cut off by the worker, they are likely to imagine your father or your mother's or your children's lives to be threatened in this specific instance. And secondly, especially in this context of labor union, it's likely to self-reinforce this effect. Because labor union, as I said, is a collective body which has similar interests to be shared in this occasion, right? This means they're going to say, yes, our life has to be protected. That's why it's going to reinforce this idea. When other people are also saying this, it's likely to normalize and say, justify that your idea is absolutely right. That's exactly, this kind of group psychology is exactly what happened. Especially when they say collectively, when everyone's interest, they can say, this is our own legitimate interest. That kind of rhetoric is likely to be reinforced in this specific instance. Two specific case studies here. Firstly, in terms of General Motors, and secondly, in terms of Japan Airlines. In both of the situations, as I told you in the introduction, in both of the cases, it has led to myopic, excessive prioritization of your livelihood, such as not being cut, such as not even agreeing to work sharing that Yusuke Nitani really wanted to protect, right? Those kind of negotiations failed because everyone wanted to keep its working hours, everyone wanted to keep its number of wages. That's exactly what happened in case of labor union. As opposed to that, board of executive is accountable to all workers because it's long-term accountable to all workers and all shareholders. It's the extent of collectiveness is much bigger on this side of the house. And they have the incentive to not, that's why, in terms of accountability, rather than prioritizing their own lives, they're much more broadly accountable to all members of society. So in terms of accountability, board of executives is much more trustworthy. Secondly, in terms of information, as opposed to ordinary workers who are working in factories or working in part of like Japan Airlines or General Motors, these individual board of executive has much more information. Firstly, regarding information strategy marketing, because it's often the case they pass MBA's majority of cases or have worked as a CEO in past other corporations. And secondly, they have the access to state policy during economic recession. They have the information specifically targeted to corporations in times of economic recession. Because in times of economic recession, states also take certain policies to facilitate economic growth in this occasion. Such as we point to the example of Japan. When Abenomics is being conducted, what they're trying to do is have deregulation in the labor market. So corporations are able to hire and fire people more easily. So they're able to allocate more people better in their own corporation by getting proficiency from other labor markets. Or secondly, point to the example of the United States. When during economic crisis has decided to actively subsidize green industry. That's why corporations like if the green corporations would like to invest in the new technology, they have subsidy and they're able to actually invest in green technology other than other field technologies that they really want to protect. So it's like, for example, for a car corporation, rather put more money on investment of like new technology, not like simply making new like old forms of cars. Just on prioritizations and knowledge is only accessed by board of executives, or especially there is one who knows about those information much more than individual. So quickly, how our policy is going to change it. So basically, if these people have this information, they're able to conduct smart and allocation of budget towards their own corporation to maximize their own benefit, such as like cutting certain, unfortunately, of unemployment in certain areas, which is not getting state subsidies, but rather allocate more money to areas where it's being subsidized back up by the state. Or secondly, invest in simply like fire in certain occasions, as opening up said, sometimes work sharing, etc., for the sake of economic recession. Those policies are likely to happen if we trust on board of executive. Ladies and gentlemen, if we see the failure of Japan Airlines or General Motors, in order to not repeat that tragedy again, we need to take this policy.
I thank the previous speaker for his speech. I call upon the next speaker to speak within 7 minutes. You're here.
お願いします。So, Mr. Speaker, we have to think two meanings of labor union at the first place. We think the first meaning of the labor union is the reflection of the voice within a relation of the company, employer and employee, as the opening government, the opening house did. And we think that far more importantly, the second meaning of the labor union is the political access of the employee and employer. We think that that relationship is really important. Actually, the Prime Minister missed the point of the political meaning of the labor union. That's why they missed the point of just because they are saying, because the existence of labor law, we think that's fine. But we think that the assumption of the entire government bench is that labor law in current form continue forever, even without the power of labor union. We think that cannot happen. That's the reason we oppose. So our explanation is quite simple. In terms of political access of the employees, we think that's fundamentally important. But before that, simple response to the government bench, no. So the clear characterization from the entire affirmative bench is that labor union is so crazily abuse the power that they have. Two responses. First of all, the employee do know that what happens if they abuse the power so crazily. Because simply the profit of the company is linked to their life, and if they crazily abuse the power, simply the profit of the company will decrease, meaning that the income that they can use can decrease, meaning that they cannot survive in a society. That's the meaning. That's the reason the employee individual do not have power to do that. Do not have incentive to do that. And secondly, we have to consider the hierarchical structure of the labor union. Simply, the information sector exists in labor union in every cases, and because the information gathered and they open the information to the employee and they buffer the majority of the employee not to abuse the power to do that. And we think on that situation, considering the hierarchical structure, such crazy case cannot happen at the first place. No. So my extension. So I want to consider the political meaning of the labor union. So in current situation, considering the two reasons, we can say that actually the political access of the company and the employees is balanced out due to existence of labor union. Two reasons. From the perspective of labor union. First of all, they have the monetary capacity due to pooled money from the employee. Because they can have money, they can gather the money from the member in regularly basis, they can participate lobbying, they can donate politicians in that situation. Meaning that they can have certain access to the political sphere. Secondly, certain amount of number of votes can promise the certain contribution to the politician. Meaning that we can appeal to the politician to have attention from the politician. Then in that situation, the politician can have such an incentive to care what exactly happening in the situation on the ground. And more than considering the capability of the company, actually that is balanced. What do I mean by that? Simply the company, they have the monetary capability and they have certain collective power within the top member, meaning that they have, because the capability, it can be balanced out in that situation. And
Sir,
opening?
How does this proposal suspend these individuals' right to vote or donate at all? We're talking about labor unions' right to influence companies, not parliament.
I'm not talking about that situation, but we are talking about how can we show the collective power to the political sphere. We think the chances to show the power is important to do that. And secondly, considering that situation, the company do have the capability. But after plan adoption, what's going to happen is quite simple. The labor union loses certain access through the lobby. And they cannot, the accessibility to do that would decrease. And more than that, as I say, the collective power would decrease. The politician losing incentive to care. And more than that, like the misinformation would make the politician think they are egoistic, they are not someone that they nationally think about the politics. In that situation, the accessibility of the employee is losing. And they say, the voting power cannot change. Yes, we agree, but considering the incentive for the politician, we think the existence of labor union is important, right? Then, uniquely we think, in terms of the economic crisis, we think that is really important. Because considering that situation, the difficulty to change their life is happening. What do you mean by that? Simply they cannot change the vocation. They cannot opt out from the situation. Clearly. Because other companies do have the difficulty to employ other possible employee because simply they do not have monetary capability. Secondly, thank you. Concerning the competition within human resources, it is very difficult to find a new job in that situation. And more than that, these citizens feel the risk to change the job. They cannot feel to change the job. In that situation, the protection done by the legal framework is needed. But we think after plan adoption, what's going to happen is that simply the balance between the company and the collective employee, that is a labor union, would be devastated. We think that is problematic. Simply as a government, what we have to guarantee is that diverse opinion that can be reflected in political sphere. But after production, what's going to happen is that simply, okay?
So your analysis is so unrealistic. Give me example. The labor union work as a lobbyist.
We think we don't have any burden to do that. Simply we have to talk about what kind of situation can happen due to this proposal. We think that is principally wrong, recognizing the principle of liberal democracy. That's the reason we have to oppose this proposal, right? Then, what I say? Yes, we think that this power to the politics should be tantamount as much as possible. That's the reason we should not take this proposal. But we have the unique extension from outside of the house is quite simple. Differentiating open opposition by in changing the sphere in terms of the politics, and we think that is fundamentally necessary for every kind of situation. That's the reason we oppose.
I thank the previous speaker for his speech. I call upon the next speaker to speak within 7 minutes. Yeah, here.
So in this debate, we are talking about which actor is the better for the entire labor's right, entire economy. And we say rather the corporation is more better actor to consider about this kind of things than the labor union. That's why we must take this proposal. So in this debate, we see the two clash points in order to summarize this debate. So first clash point is labor as a characterization of the labor union. The labor union is moderate actor that doesn't endanger the corporation side or not. And the second is that the corporation is the second clash point is that the corporation is a better actor to sustain the entire economy and the entire corporate employees' rights. That is, and in terms of this point, our side extension is uniquely contribute to this debate because our side, the closing government, uniquely focus on the analysis of both the labor union and the characterization of the labor union and the characterization of the corporation. That is why, so this debate is our side's weak. So I summarize this debate into these two criteria. So firstly, we are talking about the characterization of the labor unions. So the opening of entire opposition bench says that the labor union have a room to compromise. The labor union doesn't endanger the corporation's rights. But we think their analysis is completely insufficient because they just say that the labor union have an incentive to care about corporations because if the corporations bankrupt, labor union lost all. But in terms of this point, our extension is completely succeeded in proving that labor union is irrational. But because our partner already said that the labor union labor union's employees don't focus on the long-term benefit of the corporations because their first as my partner clearly told you, their first priority is to sustain their life, and they excessively fear to lose their life and their life. In terms of this point, we compare with the opening government that labor union employee become irrational. We more successfully and deeply analyze the irrationality. How they become irrational when they consider and compare with the corporation benefit and their life. And my partner already also said that in the labor union there is a group psychology, and more people share the fear of the bankrupting their life. In this situation, they more likely to focus on their life and less likely to fail to see the entire corporation's benefit. Therefore, in that situation, even if the labor union have some extent of the information, like the Malcolm said, they don't less likely to focus on or see this kind of the information coming from the labor union, such as economic information or so forth. They have less incentive to see that. That's why in the first place, labor union becomes an irrational actor. That's why we completely succeed in the fact that labor union endangers the corporation's rights. That's why in this discussion point we completely win the opening.
Alright, so like maybe in this economic condition time, maybe those like the factory workers' wife who are working at part-time job is fired, and this revenue for those house is extremely low. Why is it investment for those workers to fight for their wages?
I already explained later. I already explained.
Yeah.
So moving on to second point. So the corporation is the good actor or not. So in this point, we think we side is completely weak because so my partner already explained that firstly the corporation can have more information about the management of the corporation management of the corporation and entire economic situation. That's why compare with the employee that have less information about economic or management, they can show the more good strategy to improve the entire corporation and entire situation of the employees. And the operation side, I likely to talk about operation side mainly talk about after implementing this policy, labor, the corporation employees situation become weakest position and that become dangerous. But I have those three responses. Why that situation doesn't happen? The first response is very simple. As entire government side says, there is labor law and minimum standard wage can be kept. And we say the majority students is the employee and not so strong position. That's why even after taking the proposal, majority students support and both was supporting labor union. That's why such kind of the abolishment of the labor union doesn't happen unlike CO maybe want to say. That's why their extension is completely rubbish. Secondly, they say that. Secondly, as the opening opposition said, for the corporation, the trust of the corporation is important. That's why the trust of the keeping the employees minimum standard life is also important. That's why the corporation don't have huge incentive to excessively exploit the corporation employees' life. The introduction of the opening dictation of the opening so completely damaging their cases and supporting our case. Anyway, in terms of this point, corporation, in order to keep the trust, in order to image the corporations and corporations that long-term benefit, corporations don't excessively exploit these people. And thirdly, corporations also have the as I told you, corporations have also huge information. That's why they can care on employee and protect. That's why we propose.
I thank the previous speaker for his speech. I call upon the last speaker of this round to speak within 7 minutes. Yeah, here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What my partner has brought you on this debate, other extension from closing off, is extremely important, precisely because my partner extension is crucially damaging the entire case of the side of affirmative bench. In the first place, the entire assumption from that side of the house is, look, in both paradigms, law can protect the minimum situation of labor, to which we say no, precisely because after taking this proposal, Mr. Speaker, labor union cannot use their own lobbying to the political arena. Specifically, Mr. Speaker, we think this is a highly problematic situation in the first place, precisely because under the Parliament proposition bench, what's going to happen is quite simply, corporations structurally pervert the public interest of the entire society as a whole in the first place. More than that, Mr. Speaker, voting is not sufficient to reflect the voices of laborers in the first place. Why? Precisely because in the voting, Mr. Speaker, each constituent have diverse viewpoints in addition to the labor's situation. Like the example with diplomacy, like the example of criminal justice system, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, labor union is absolutely necessary, specifically in the case of economic crisis, to keep the minimum line of law in the current situation. That is why, Mr. Speaker, we are exceedingly proud to propose 2 points of summary. Firstly, I'm going to be looking at issue of necessity of labor unions, and secondly, I'm going to be talking about the efficacy of abolishing the labor union. On the first issue about necessity, the key logic we got from opening prop is that, look, quick decision-making process is absolutely necessary during times of economic crisis. Good. Therefore, even if that's the case to a certain extent, that is why labor unions have a unique and specific incentive to accelerate the speed of negotiation in proportion to the extent of economic crisis for preventing the unemployment. Mr. Speaker, how can they do that? 2 ways. Mr. Speaker, firstly, Mr. Speaker, the spectrum of the interest of laborers, specifically in terms of economic crisis, is highly more likely to be smaller in comparison with the context except the economic crisis in the first place. More than that, Mr. Speaker, secondly, each laborers have tons of incentive to conceal their own interests with each other, especially in the time of economic crisis, precisely because, Mr. Speaker, the profit of the corporation is absolutely necessary to keep the employment in the first place. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, especially in the times of economic crisis, labor unions have massive incentive to accelerate the negotiation speed, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, in that case, it's damaging. And second idea from that side of the house is, look, whole economy is consistently damaging by keeping the power of labor union. This is the entire line of proposition. First response we have is that this is not the case. Why? Precisely because the speed of recovering from economic crisis doesn't change in both paradigms. Why? Precisely because under the paradigm of proposition bench, in exchange for the increase in the supplier's right, that side of the house is going to deprive the demand from consumers. Mr. Speaker, for example, let's imagine under the paradigm of proposition bench, people are highly less likely to consume their own money for corporations. As a result, under the paradigm of proposition bench, what's going to happen? It's quite simply the loss of profit from the demand of the consumers, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, through this process, we think the speed of the recovery from economic crisis doesn't change entirely. Third idea coming from that side of the house is laborers are irrational, to which we say, no, laborers are rational. Why? That is why, Mr. Speaker, laborers are more likely to focus on the lives of your family and your father. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, laborers are more likely to focus on the profit of the corporation. Mr. Speaker, laborers are more likely to balancing out the situation of each corporation, Mr. Speaker, precisely because the sustainability of the corporation is absolutely necessary to keep your employment, Mr. Speaker, especially in the times of economic crisis. It is extremely difficult to change your job, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, that is why, Mr. Speaker, because you are more likely to think about your situation or family, your wife, Mr. Speaker, you are more likely to focus on the sustainability of the corporation. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we believe laborers are rational. Lastly, they mentioned information is lacking for labor union. Yeah, that is why, Mr. Speaker, in the first place, but that's not the reason to abolish labor union in the first place. Precisely because in all contexts, Mr. Speaker, information is asymmetric here. And secondly, more importantly, even if that's the case to a certain extent, we are happy to inform more to labor unions in the first place. That is why, Mr. Speaker, this is not the reason to affirm the policy in the first place. More than that, Mr. Speaker, the idea from that side of the house is, look, board of executive can think about shareholders more broadly. This is not the reason to specifically abolish the labor unions, Mr. Speaker, precisely because that is case to all contexts, Mr. Speaker. However, that side of the house clearly conceded the necessity of labor union in the context except to economic crisis. Therefore, this analysis is not the reason to abolish labor union. Precisely because in all contexts, board of executive can think about the situation of corporation more broadly, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, this analysis is not relevant on this debate. Recognizing that, Mr. Speaker, we believe from the side, especially from closing off, Mr. Speaker, we believe there is no specific analysis to specifically abolish the necessity of labor union from that side. We think this is highly problematic. Recognizing that, on to the second point of summary, but before that, opening.
So how are all workers, like professional accountants, going to compromise wage and sustainability of the company?
More than that, Mr. Speaker, that is not the reason to specifically abolish the labor union. Mr. Speaker, your opening proposition clearly consider the necessity of the labor union in the first place. More than that, Mr. Speaker, we are happy to educate the accountants of each labor union. More than that, Mr. Speaker, each labor union have many functions of calculating the interest of corporation, precisely because in all labor union there is a certain kind of accountant and so forth. Therefore, your point is nonsense. Recognizing that, on to the second point of summary, the entire assumption, the entire benefit from that side is predicated on the assumption that law can protect the minimum situation of labor, to which we say no. As Mr. Speaker, why? Because under the Parliament proposition bench, labor's union cannot use lobbying to the political arena. Mr. Speaker, this is the point what my partner brought to you at the extension. As a result of that, Mr. Speaker, corporations are highly likely to pervert the public interest of each society in the first place. Therefore, more and more people are highly less likely to think about the situation of the law protection, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, we think this is problematic. The response from the side has a civil lawsuit can protect their how no. It takes a lot of time and money and so on. More than the voting right is insufficient, precisely because constituents have many viewpoints. Therefore, labor union is specifically necessary, absolutely necessary, in order to protect the situation, integrity of the law in the current situation. That side I want to protect. Therefore, in order to protect the law, that side I want to protect. We believe the labor union is absolutely necessary, and this is the point what my partner brought to an extension to which we have no response from Miyokun. That is why we extremely proud of both. Thank you.
I thank the previous speaker for his speech. All speeches over. Thank you for your nice cooperation. お疲れ様でした。